back. Can you hear me? Just wait if you can. Yep, thank you so much. So, really, very nice to be here, and thank you for coming on. It is actually nice to be. It's been a few years since I've had the pleasure of being back in the Kim Beazley Lecture Theatre, so it's actually quite nice to be back giving lectures here. What I'm going to talk a bit about today is Fremantle, but I hope what you get out of it is not just what Fremantle is doing, but a journey that cities all around the world are undertaking. I had the pleasure the last month of visiting quite a few of the best and most sustainable cities in Europe, which was really exciting. And there's some fantastic things happening. So I'll share a little bit from that as well as some of the things that we're trying to do in Fremantle as we become a more sustainable city. So this, for those of you who are interested in following this up a bit further, the City of Fremantle and the Council signed off on this strategy last year, where we took quite a simple premise that our community, like every community, needs to operate as though we only have one planet. It doesn't sound very radical, but when you know that, and if we all really operated like we do here in Australia, we would need 3 or 4 planets worth of resources and the like. It actually is radical in the sense of it's going to require some major changes. And this framework is a really good one. So Fremantle is one of only 2 councils in Australia that's certified as a one-planet council, and one of only 4 in the world. But this is a movement that is really growing, and it's a really important certification, because what it does is it takes actually takes a very holistic approach, where becoming a more sustainable council is not just about doing 1 or 2 things. It actually is around looking at how do you deal with things such as zero carbon, zero waste, transport materials, food, water, wildlife, culture and heritage, equity in local economy, and health and happiness. All of those, you see there's a lot there, and I'm not going to go through them all today because I think we'll still be here till late afternoon if I did. But what I will do is give you a bit of a snapshot of a few of those, and I would encourage you, for those of you who are interested, that all of these documents can be downloaded from the City of Fremantle website, and there's some really great material in there. I'm going to start with carbon, because that follows on from what Peter Newman was talking about this morning, when he was talking about the good news around how the cities are dealing with the challenge of climate change. And look, there is amongst the challenge, and certainly it's challenging in Australia right now as we try and deal with this issue, because it feels like there is a lack of political will to tackle one of the biggest challenges that what we face as a planet here. But actually there really is a lot of fantastic stuff happening around the world. I did come back from Europe really inspired that many places really are getting it. In Fremantle, I mean, lucky to have a really good council who also see that it's really important that we actually do show leadership in this. So there's been a few things that we've done. The first is actually around just saying that every year we'll commit a simple 1% of our rates to actually go into investing in renewable energy, to actually make sure that the City of Fremantle starts to actually transition very quickly away from relying on our power grid, which is primarily coal and gas, to one that can actually rely on renewables. And actually it's really nice, we're doing the budgets here, so a bit of a side story. So we're doing our budget, and budgets are always challenging. And for local governments, a big part of our budget is our electricity and gas bills. And we realised that over the last couple of years, our electricity and gas bills were coming down very rapidly. And that was actually because this program now is starting to have an impact. So what we've done is we've made sure that we're carbon neutral, and actually making sure that we are putting every City of Fremantle building has solar panels on it. And to be honest with you, it just makes economic sense. So putting the environmental stuff aside now, solar has come down in price so quickly, and is now actually I think any business would be crazy not to invest in this. So we've been doing that across all of ours. In fact, our real challenge now is allowing Synergy to export our excess power onto the grid, which is certainly they've been not that enthusiastic about, but we'll keep having that battle. And then the other one is some really big investments in other things that use a lot of power, like all local governments. We have major swimming pool and leisure centres, which were relying on gas. We had old gas boilers, like a giant hot water system, really, to make sure the pool was warm enough to swim in. What we invested in last year was this It's a shallow geothermal system that goes down about 160 metres. It sits underneath the pool and the ovals here, and just captures the warmth of that water, which is about 27 degrees, and that gets pumped up and back through basically through a heat exchange system, and it's not only saving us huge amounts of CO2, but actually is actually saving us money as well, which has been a really exciting project. And there's more to come. This is one that I'm really excited about. So we have just signed a process with a group called First Solar, which is a major international solar company, to do what will be the biggest urban solar farm in Australia, possibly, and certainly the first of its kind on this side of the country. And this is actually a real win-win. We own this old tip site behind South Beach in South Fremantle, which, to be frank, is contaminated to the point where we don't really have ways of dealing with it given current technologies. So all we can really do is lock it up. But rather than lock up these hectares of land, we actually realised that it's actually much better that we actually have said we went out to the market and said which of the solar companies would like this land for putting a large-scale solar farm on. We've got a really strong response. In fact, we said we'll give you the land for nothing. You just have to make sure you connect it up with the grid. And the city will actually buy, this will actually help us in terms of our carbon neutral process. We will buy through a power purchasing agreement, a large portion of the power that comes off this for our things like our street lights and the like. So this is really exciting. There's about 7 megawatts all up, and we'll hopefully see that construction underway in the next year or so. This one's less positive at the moment, but a really great idea and one that's been driven really strongly by the community around Fremantle and supported by the Fremantle Council, we're on the Fremantle port, in many ways the same size as the cranes, actually having 9 major wind turbines out there. Interesting, the Fremantle port, we're actually going to do this almost a decade ago now, and got very close, but it was they were undermined by the power companies here in Western Australia at the last, and then since then we've been going back. We've got some challenges with the current Fremantle Port Authority, who aren't as keen at the moment, but we'll keep pushing that because I think that's would be another really important project showing. I mean, again, coming back to Europe, where you just saw this everywhere. You get this kind of hysterical reaction often to wind in parts of some of our politicians in Australia, But the reality is, when you go to Europe, it's just everywhere and commonplace, and you start to see that it's very much a core part of the energy mix and very much a growing part of it as well. So that looks at kind of some of the electricity. In terms of buildings, though, are actually really, really important as well. So our target within that One Planet strategy I was telling you about is to have all buildings in the city of Fremantle's control to be net zero carbon by 2020. Not very far away, and that's going to require some major investment. And these things are happening at different rates. I want to talk about this one's actually not the City of Fremantle building, but this is a project that we supported, and Josh and his team are doing some amazing work. This is actually a great project, not just because what Josh has done in his house in Hilton, just down South Street here, is at the highest rating in terms of being a 10-star rated house. But what I found really interesting about this, what he's demonstrated is that he could build that house that pretty well produces more power than it uses. It's extremely water efficient as well and extremely livable. And he produced that house not just the good business, but sustainable, and he did it for the same price and in the same time frame as a standard house in Western Australia. And that's pretty extraordinary. So all this idea that it costs more to do sustainability, do things well, he's done an enormous amount of work in actually debunking that myth, and actually says that sustainability and sustainable houses can be built for exactly the same price. And I'll come back to the question of affordability in a minute, because it's actually a very important part of sustainable cities is affordable housing. But affordability is not just about how much it costs to buy a house, it's actually how much it costs to run a house. And what a house like Josh's house shows is that actually we can have houses at the same cost to buy, but almost cost zero to run, and that's really, really important. The city as well has been really trying to push quite strongly on making sure that our commercial buildings are sustainable as well, and actually are Green Star rated. So everything that we build as a city has to be a minimum of 5-star Green Star rating. We did try to mandate that any other building built in the city had to be 4-star rated as well. The state government pushed back on that and said, well, you can put that as a policy, but you can't mandate it. But we certainly have. So we've been working with developers on that, and to be honest with you, again, this is where I think the private sector is ahead of government, where the vast majority of the developers we work with are really keen to do highly efficient buildings, Green Star rated buildings, which has been really good. So we're seeing the next generation of new buildings that are coming through Fremantle being extremely energy efficient. So at the commercial level, it's looking good. At the small-scale residential level, the future's also looking really promising. Where I don't think we've quite got it right yet in WA is around how we do multi-residential, like apartments, and actually demonstrating that. So, and I do fear sometimes that we're putting a whole new generation of apartments that are not very sustainable, and actually not high quality. So this is where this is one of the most inspiring things that I saw when I was in Europe the last month. The European summer was beautiful as usual. But despite that, this is Malmö in Sweden, a place called the Western Harbour. Now they've done, it's an old port project, so it's really relevant to a place like Fremantle, where they converted a old port land into a medium density, primarily residential area. One that has set such an amazing bar in terms of sustainability. Not only can you see this look extremely livable, and they've created great urban green spaces and those kinds of things, but what they did was actually have a absolutely integrated approach where this whole area produces more energy than it uses. Even one of my favourite examples is what they do with waste. So in the houses, so instead of your food scraps, actually they have grinders installed in the houses. All the food scraps are ground up, going down a chute and are sucked to the edge of the development where they're picked up, and then turned into biogas, which is actually running Malmö's bus fleet. So the food scraps from people in this development are running the bus fleet of the city. And it just shows you that with some good planning and some good leadership, you can actually get some pretty amazing outcomes. That was Malmö. The other one we looked at was Freiburg, which is, as you can see, this is quite a famous development. And this one was, I'd read a lot about this for many years, and when I got there it was even better than I thought it was going to be. It was extraordinary. So this is in southern Germany, where they've done a whole development on an old army base on the outskirts of Freiburg. Vauban is actually the name of the little suburb within it, and amazing. Just because they gain that sense of not just was it sustainable, and this sunship development again produces much more energy than it uses, and very clever mix of uses, but also it was very livable, really focused on nature, getting nature back within the city, on children, on community, and it was certainly a very inspiring example around how we can do denser development as well, which I'll come back to in a minute as to why that's important. And you think about Perth, you think, well, where's some great examples of how we do these new developments really well? And it's really hard to think of them. So one of the things that I'm quite excited I'm doing with my council is we've got an old depot site in Wycombe Valley, the Fremantle border, which I think we can actually do a demonstration site on that, which actually shows what a medium density community should look like for the 21st century. So we've been doing some really exciting work around that, and it's looking good. I mean, one thing that's really exciting is realising that we probably will connect to the grid, but you probably don't need to anymore. I mean, and this is probably the biggest transformation. So we did a whole bunch of this, looking at how much solar we need to put on, and battery technology into this new development. You start to realise it's getting very close, where it's cheaper to make your own power and store it than it is to buy coal-fired power off the grid. And these little boxes, I know people have read much about Tesla. So Tesla are the one who produce electric cars, but they've just announced that they're also now producing batteries that you can buy for your house, that you can connect to your solar system. And we're about to go through a revolution, I think, over the next decade, which will probably be the equivalent of the revolution that phones went through over the last 20 years, where the idea now that you had to have a landline where you've got to go and stand next to a bit of copper wire and wait for someone to ring you, sounds kind of old-fashioned and kind of ridiculous in our world of not only mobile phones but very smartphones. We're going to be soon on a very smart electricity grid, one that doesn't need to be connected to a broader electricity grid, and I think one that will be much more sustainable because it will be almost solely connected up to renewable energy. And that's for me a really exciting part of the future about where we're going to go. And it's going to be a huge challenge for governments to deal with, who have relied on Western power and those kinds of things, on their old model of having a coal-fired power station a couple of hundred k's away and wasting most of the energy as it tries to get to the metro area, and then ultimately, certainly, and that energy coming from coal and really polluting sources. That's about to be dismantled, and I think that's actually really exciting. The other exciting thing where I think we're starting to see within cities is re-greening our cities. There's been a great campaign run by a group called the 2020 campaign, which is about 20% of our cities should be green spaces by 2020. Which actually makes a lot of sense. And the City of Fremantle is just going through our green plan and actually working out how we can get nature back into our cities. One study which we've been doing, which is on the right there, and you can see Peter Neiman there from Curtin, but also Murdoch's been involved as well as UWA. It's been a real joint university approach around actually looking at green walls and green roofs. It's called the Green Skins Project, where we've been doing a study around that, around green walls and things are really much easier in places like Europe because it's kind of wet and colder. When you've got dry, hot climate, where it doesn't rain for 4 months in a place like Perth, it's much more challenging. So we're starting to do some research around what species can we use and how do you best plan to actually create, just start to green up our cities in terms of walls and roofs. But also starting to do simple things like plant trees. New York's been doing it. They've got a 1 million tree program. Fremantle's not quite as big as New York, so we've got a 1,000 trees a year program. But that actually makes a big difference. You start planting 1,000 new trees a year across your city centre, all of a sudden this idea of an urban forest actually becomes really important. It's about getting biodiversity back into our cities, bringing nature back into our cities. It's actually really, really important. And there's also been a fantastic movement, again, this is global, and there's also obviously here in Western Australia as well, where people also want to have community gardens. And I guess as our suburbs do get denser and our backyards get smaller, having these joint community gardens is going to be really, really important. So one of the things we've been doing is that we're going to make sure there's a community garden within walking distance of every household in Fremantle. So people can choose to be part of that. This is one in Hilton where we've worked with the local the primary school there, some land that they weren't using, and supported the local community in terms of converting that space into a garden which not only where people can grow their own veggies and actually create green spaces that way, but also, really importantly, create community, which has been fantastic. And then coming right into the Fremantle CBD, trying some more radical ideas like taking parking spaces. Sometimes just for a day. We do an event called Parking Day where we go out to anyone who's interested and they want to take a parking spot, and for a day they can do anything they want with it. In terms of make it a parklet. In fact, last year we had someone excited to bring down goats and just the idea of claiming back our city from the cars and actually realising that a parking space can actually be a place for community, a place for nature, a place for other things happening. So that's a really a nice thing. But we actually are also rolling out permanent parklets where cafes, businesses can actually start to convert what was a parking space in front of theirs into a space where people can actually get together and hang out. Unfortunately, and this photo for me is a really important one, what we're seeing on the fringes of our city, and this is a photo just on the north, if you drive up to the north of Perth, this is exactly what you'll see. And this has been happening year on year, where Perth is just sprawling north and south, where our footprint is so large because our density in part is so low. Now the really disturbing part about this is that the area that we're bulldozing is a global biodiversity hotspot, and we are just demolishing that and replacing it with a monoculture of black roofs and lawns and palm trees, and that for me has to stop. Perth's growing pretty rapidly. In fact, the government just released a document in the last month which talks about Perth as a city of 3.5 million, the third biggest city in Australia by 2050. And if we keep going with our current approach, which is that more than 70% of new dwellings are occurring out here on this urban fringe, less than 30% are actually occurring internally, then we're going to keep seeing this level of sprawl. So for me, one of the things I'm really passionate about is how do we start to re-densify our cities around transit corridors so that we don't need to sprawl on the urban fringe. So for me, this has been one of the most challenging parts. And it'd be fair to say this is one of the more controversial things, because density doesn't have broad support in Western Australia yet. Although, again, coming back to Europe, I think it would be fair to say people have understood how to do density well there, and I think in a way that we haven't. So one of my great challenges has been, how do we get several thousand more residents living right around the heart of Fremantle? And economically for Fremantle, that's good. Fremantle is struggling economically because not enough people live and work in the middle of Fremantle. So for us, it's a real win-win. So that's been, in fact, at the moment, there's only about 1,000 people living in the middle of Fremantle, which is kind of crazily low. So we're actually looking at more than quadrupling that in these key areas where we've actually started to increase the density. And these 5,000 people who live in this area, you can see there's plenty of room for going up, unless you think car yards are an attractive entry to a city. There's plenty of room for actually going up and doing that, and actually creating affordable apartments with mixed use and local amenities, which for me is really exciting. So yeah, to give you an example, these are not the most attractive photos, or certainly our architecture will be a lot better than this, but to give you a bit of a mock-up, you get a bit of a sense of how these areas can change. So, and I guess one of the things, a very specific comment at this point is, you know, you can do that without undermining the beautiful heritage assets that you've got. So taking the non-heritage parts of Fremantle, which are where those car yards are and the less attractive 60s and 70s developments are, and redeveloping those, as you can see on this diagram here. So we've been working on that pretty hard, but because good cities are cities where everything is in walking distance. The chief planner from Freiburg talked about creating cities of short distances. The idea that everything that you need on a day-to-day level is within a short distance. You can either ride your bike, catch a tram, or walk between the things you need the vast majority of the time. And Freiburg's done that extremely well. So as a result, people use their cars very, very rarely. People still have cars. People still use them. But unlike Western Australia, where we have, in terms of mode share, it's pushing close to 80%. Their mode share of car use is more like around about 20 or 30%. So that's actually really, really exciting. So just to give you one example where we've got groups like the Mediterranean Shipping Company moving into the west end of Fremantle, because we want more jobs in there as well, not just without having more residents. And also adapting some of these beautiful old what were wool store buildings, like this one here, which is actually a really exciting project, which has just started. So the scaffolding's gone up in the last week or so it's kind of nice to look at that, to see, you know, then you have 240 extra units in that part of Fremantle, which is all within walking distance of the city centre and the train station. And then some more kind of creative ones. So obviously you've got density in your core around your train station, but also how do we do density in the suburbs without bulldozing our backyards? For me, the real thing what we're doing at the moment is when we're subdividing our blocks, taking out all the trees, and actually creating this barren wasteland of roofs, for me is the worst kind of density we can do. So Fremantle has pioneered an idea which has now got planning approval across the whole state, which is around small dwellings, or put it another way, this idea of granny flats without grannies. So it used to be a rule in WSEN. You only have a small dwelling at the back if a relative lived in it. You couldn't have anyone else but someone who was related to you living in it. So we've changed that and said that you can build as of right, don't even need planning approval, a dwelling at 60 square metres or less. So that's not very big. It's like a one bedroom, kind of pretty small, in your backyard. But you've got to do things like leave your trees and actually build around those, and actually it can only be single story, and actually having that a really small footprint. But what that does, it actually enables people to live in those kinds of places. Because we've done a funny thing in WA, and we wonder why we have an affordability crisis. Over the last 30 or 40 years, we've doubled the size of our houses. They used to be about 120 square metres, now they're about 240 square metres on average. But while we've done that, at the same time we've halved the number of people who are in each of those houses. It's down from about 4 people to 2. And then we wonder why we've got an affordability crisis when we're building big houses with nobody in them. So what this is doing is actually providing small places, because many people do live by themselves now, and actually don't need to kind of rattle around in a huge 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. So this actually won a whole range of planning awards, and can actually get another 5,000 people living in Fremantle in little dwellings in people's backyards. And also, as you can, those of you who are students here, it's really great for, if you're a student as well. It's actually a really nice way of actually living while you're studying. Designing houses for Gen Y. And I really like this project. I was on the judging panel for this, where we got, so the rules for this were that the architect had to be Generation Y themselves, and had to design an affordable set of dwellings for Gen Y people, and then there was a judging panel which had a combination of Gen Y people and others like myself who weren't. And this is a really great example. What they've done, this is also actually in Fremantle, in Whitecomb Valley, this site, on the old Kidley School site, built a new dwelling that are probably going to cost less than 300,000. I mean, and that's, I mean, it's still expensive by global standards, but certainly by Perth standards, it's extremely cheap. And actually, for the first time, we can actually start to have some more innovative, adaptable kinds of designs that are actually for what people need today. So that's a really exciting project, which is actually getting built about now. So watch out for how that looks and some tools you can do with that down the track. This is actually a photo also from another development in Freiburg called Ricefeld, where they, an old, right on the edge of, again, right at suburban fringe, which I showed you of Perth. This is kind of the equivalent, except this was, in this case, an old sewage works, which they redeveloped. And just to give you a sense of density doesn't have to be ugly. It doesn't have to be something where it doesn't have to be that sense of no space. And what they've done really well is, whilst you can see most of the developments are 3 or 4 stories and are reasonably dense by our standards, there's fantastic green spaces around it. There's lots of community spaces. They did really important things like getting transport in there early, like light rail, and they felt really livable. And when going through those and speaking to the people who live there, you get a real sense of it has to be the future, because they're more sustainable and they're more livable, and they're actually more affordable as well. So, transport. Transport's really important, and it's often the forgotten part as we think about our cities and how we do them, as to how that fits together. And just to give you some quick stats from International Plan for Climate Change. So, transport contributes over a quarter, 27% of our global CO2 emissions come from that, and that could double by 2050 if we don't actually act and become the largest source of CO2. And so action needs a really strong response. So for me, it's very topical in Perth. We certainly have a lot of debates around light rail and bus rapid transit and all those things at the moment. And in Fremantle, we've got a bit of a multi-layered plan around transport and how that fits with our One Planet strategy. And at the heart of it, so bikes, public transport, and ultimately acknowledging that cars are going to exist, but how do we do that better? So bikes, I've got this photos from Amsterdam, where they have an unusual problem in Amsterdam we don't really experience in Perth, which is bike parking. Where do you put all the bikes? And it actually is like 3 or 4 stories high outside the train station in Amsterdam, where they are. And there really are bikes everywhere, and it's amazing. I think it's one of those problems you want to have. It's a problem I aspire to. So, but as you can see, in Perth, we're a long way from having that problem. You can see our journeys to work are pretty low. So Perth, it's gone up a little bit since 2011. We're probably at 1.6 here. I'd say we're closer to 2 now, but still pretty low when you're at 2% of journeys. And just to give you contrast from another great European, sorry, I'll come back in a minute, so throat's going to break before I do that. So Fremantle's a little bit higher than that. You can see from this where we've got little pockets of green and orange. So we're on that. Look, I think if you averaged out all the Fremantle suburbs, we're probably about double the Perth average. Closer to 4 is our reading of it. But pockets actually are higher than that again. So you can see here, but most of, as you can see, the vast majority of Perth sits around that 2%. So even while I'm proud of Fremantle's doing better, when you contrast that to a place like Copenhagen, it's quite a gap. So Copenhagen is 45%, which is, in fact, a young girl who'd been doing this study for a long time, he was quite proud when we were there. He was like, oh, we were stuck at 37, 38% for years, and now we finally kind of got up to 45. It's a very big gap from where we are at. And one of the things that they do really well is that they've created a really safe environment for riding so that women ride as much as men. In fact, more women ride than men. But you can see in Australia that the green is females who ride, and you can see on average it's about half in terms of men who ride a bike on a regular basis. And that's just because a combination of helmet rules and a combination of it doesn't feel safe. So we've got a really long way to go in that regard. And a lot of that is going to be around providing really good, separated, safe cycling infrastructure, which is really key. So, and that's been something we've been really strongly focused on in Fremantle. We're spending millions of dollars on bike paths so that it's safe to ride. And I think that's the best investment that we can make. It's actually really good value. And there's a long way to go for that. And I would say that places like Copenhagen and Amsterdam have been doing that, but they've been doing it for decades. And it's not something you can do overnight. And I think this is actually a key point, is that creating sustainable cities, it's not a decision you can make and then do it. It's actually a commitment you've got to make over a generation to actually go through that transition. And bike infrastructure is just an example of that. But also, just little things around free bike hire. So you can go to Fremantle and you can hire a bike for free and ride it around for the day and take it back. Yeah, and actually enabling, making it more simple. So whether you're a tourist or just a visitor or a resident, that it actually is part of what we do. Even little creatures offer free bike hire. Not sure how that goes with beer, but it's still a good service. So, and the other part for us is around actually making sure that we work towards getting much better public transport. Fremantle's lucky to have a good train station, but all around the world, light rail is where it's at. And there's this ridiculous debate in Perth right now that somehow tries to equate bus and bus rapid transit as though it's equivalent to light rail. The big difference, which all the global evidence would suggest, is that what light rail can do and which buses can't is actually also get better urban development around it and provide that certainty that actually will get much globally. People who will never get on a bus will get on a train or a light rail. That's just a strange part about human nature, but one that's proved to be pretty universal. So in Fremantle, we've actually planned for a light rail system. We accept it's not going to happen within this government, but by making sure that we're ready to go and we've got all our planning in place, when the stars align around funding and government priorities, the council is certainly ready to have that go in as soon as possible, which actually will link around the Cappuccino Strip, back around the roundhouse, the train station, and ultimately up here to Murdoch Inn, because this is actually a really important link, because around the Murdoch Activity Centre, which the uni is part of, with the hospitals, there's more than 30,000 people work here. will work here once we're all complete, which is extraordinary number. And then, and everyone's, including the council here, are bemoaning the fact that they won't be able to get enough people in and out. The traffic situation is going to be shambolic. Now, this is where it's a classic case of where you've got to invest in the right infrastructure. So having the train to the city and a light rail obviously running down South Street, connecting to the Fremantle train station will be really, really important. And then what that can also do, going back to the earlier point around density, is actually you can enable more dense urban corridor running down the whole of South Street to actually start to deal with urban sprawl around that. So we're working with government on that because I think that's a really, really important project. And again, coming back to this is another example from Freiburg, light rail doesn't have to be unattractive. In fact, they actually, interesting that they almost had all of them on grass, and it wasn't just because it looked better, but actually because they cut the noise and the vibrations by about 40%. So they actually had these amazing green corridors running through your cities everywhere, which were ran along as part of the light rail. That was a pretty good along South Street, I reckon. Now, being pragmatic as well, acknowledging that cars ultimately also have to be part of what we do. This is a Tesla, so I was talking about the battery before. This is actually the car they make. These are all over Europe because of the government subsidies. In fact, every taxi in Amsterdam pretty well seems to be a Tesla. So we're certainly looking at acknowledging how can we support electric vehicles. In Fremantle, if you do have an electric vehicle, you can park for free and you can charge for free. And we're just working with the RAC at the moment around being the first stop on an electric recharge highway that will run all the way down into the southwest, which is really exciting, and there'll be fast chargers as well. And then, so this is the car that the City of Fremantle owns that the councillors and I get to drive, and this is an example of that, an electric car. Trying to the problem with them now is they're expensive, but actually trying to mainstream that kind of technology so that actually can take off. But it does need government support for that to grow and become much more standard. The other aspect around cars is that we don't all need a car each or two cars in a family. And car share is increasingly common around the world, where the idea that you just have a car that you can use when you need it, but it's shared. So GoGet, this example here, we're working with them at the moment to bring them into Perth. They're big in Sydney and Melbourne, and what that enables is that people it reduces car use, but it still enables people to have that flexibility and that choice around cars. So that's another really exciting thing to look out for, and hopefully we'll see car share take off in Western Australia reasonably soon. The last one on transport, just to finish with, is that sense of, it does matter, that sense of it takes a lot of cars to move people, it could be on a bus or a bike or walking, and that really changes not only the sustainability of our cities, but how difficult they are. Last one. So, and just talking about communities, this is a really important point to end on, is that transition to a more sustainable society is going to ultimately require how we engage with our community, and also actually how we create spaces for community to grow. And I've been really enthusiastic in our squares and our parks in Fremantle to create spots where people feel comfortable, almost like there's that sense of that our public spaces should be like our lounge rooms, but where we can get to know each other as a community. And that might be through little things like free public ping pong and free Wi-Fi and all those kinds of things, and tables and chairs you can move around. But that actually is a really important part of that, because we're not going to make this transition to a more sustainable society unless we actually have a community that starts to drive that and connect around those issues. And just to give you one example, where the City of Fremantle is currently going through a process of banning single-use plastic bags. Now that came from our community. That was a community that came to us with a petition and said we want that to happen. And it made it really easy for us as a council to say, yeah, we'll support that. But that was a really great example, and we're currently just negotiating with the state government that they don't. So this law has been passed by us. The state government is threatening to nullify it, but we're currently having that negotiation and letting this run as a trial in Fremantle, because we think it's really, really important because the whole state, South Australia, Tasmania, the ACT, Northern Territory already do it. And I think it's going to happen across Australia anyway. So at least let Fremantle trial it for WA. But it is that really important thing around leadership in the community. And this is the last slide, and it's a bit of a segue into another session that's happening immediately after this, where there's a low carbon schools program, and the City of Fremantle has been working with low carbon schools around actually how we can start to get schools reducing their CO2 emissions, saves the schools money, reduces their carbon footprint, and it's a really exciting program. And we've been working both with them and also other businesses around how investment into LED lighting, into solar panels, has a really quick commercial payback, but also is really, really good. So I think there is going to be a group who are going to be going from...
There'll be a volunteer. You'll notice him at the back with the magnificent orange beard, and he will guide any of you who are interested in this and take you to the location.
Yeah, so if you're interested in hearing about the Low Carbon Schools program, which is a really great program that the City of Fremantle has been involved in, we're really excited about. We encourage you to go to that session next as well. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a sense of some of our inspiration and some of it's a journey. Sustainability is not something you arrive at, it's a journey, but it's one that's a really exciting one, and one that I get a sense of is gathering momentum. And thanks for all of you for coming on today and being part of it.